Howdy everyone, and today I have the pleasure of doing one of my favourite things, testing out a new lens on Canon RF mount, and it's another of their ridiculously expensive new L lenses, the Canon RF 85mm f1.2 L USM. It costs an eye-watering $2,700 or about £2,800 in the UK, an absolutely crazy amount of money. It had better be earth-shatteringly spectacular to justify that kind of price. It will only work on Canon's new mirrorless EOS R cameras. Don't mix this up with the slightly more expensive DS or defocus smoothing version of the lens, which costs more and offers smoother bokeh. This is a review of the non-DS version, although I will eventually test both. Well, whatever this lens's price, its potential is certainly there. 85mm is a classic focal length for portrait and subject photography, getting you quite a strong emphasis on your subject while not totally compressing your background away into an oblivion like a longer telephoto lens might do. And of course, an extremely bright maximum aperture of f1.2 can offer you enormous background separation and bokeh potential, throwing your backgrounds way out of focus, even with subjects that are further away from you. Thankfully, Canon's EOS R cameras have eye autofocusing to help you get those portrait pictures perfectly sharp. On top of that, an aperture of f1.2 lets in tons of light to your camera, getting you faster shutter speeds and making it much easier to shoot indoors or in darker situations. Well, let's start by looking at build quality. As you can see, this lens is big enormous. It almost looks comical when mounted onto a mirrorless camera, and staring into the colourful glass abyss of that giant front element is like losing yourself into the bosom of infinity itself. The lens's body is based on a metal lens mount with weather sealing, and Canon claim that other parts of the lens are quite well weather sealed too. However, the rest of the lens's body is made of plastic, presumably to keep the weight down, which is already a hefty 1.2 kilograms, or over 2.5 pounds. The lens's focus ring is rubberized, turns smoothly, and as usual nowadays, is electronically coupled to the focus motor. It does work nice and responsively though. The lens does exhibit some focus breathing, with your image zooming in a little as you focus closer to your subject, as you can see here. The autofocus motor works reasonably quickly and accurately, as you can see here. Sometimes it goes the wrong way, but then quickly corrects itself. It does make a little noise as it focuses though, as you can hear. It's not a very loud noise, although some of it will make it to your camera's built-in microphone while recording video. The lens also features one of Canon's customizable control rings at the front, which can be set to control almost any number of functions. It comes with gentle clicks to it, although Canon do offer a service to remove those clicks and make it turn smoothly for a price. The lens's filter thread size is 82mm wide. It does not feature image stabilization, but it does come with a nice deep lens hood. Overall, you have to give it high marks for build quality, although for nearly £3,000 you might expect something with a little more pizzazz. Anyway, image quality. I'll be testing the lens on a 30MP Canon EOS R, the highest resolution EOS R camera available at the time I made this review. Well, actually, I currently have a 45MP EOS R5 on order, but I only had this lens for testing for a few days, and unfortunately it didn't arrive in time. Well, anyway, in the middle of the image, straight from f1.2, we see spectacular image quality with plenty of sharpness, contrast, and no purple fringing. And over in the corners, more of the same really. It's simply brilliant image quality, even at this extremely bright aperture. If you want even more, then stop down to f2 for a tiny little improvement, with corner sharpness becoming absolutely perfect now. Already, the lens is outperforming the 30MP sensor. The lens stays this sharp down to f11, although f16 will look a little softer due to the effects of diffraction. Well, anyone who wasn't particularly impressed by the lens's build quality will now be able to get an idea of why it's so expensive. What a spectacular optical performance overall. Plenty of sharpness, plenty of contrast. Let's move on and look at distortion and vignetting. Your camera will usually correct these for you, although you can turn corrections off to get a glimpse of how the lens is really performing. We see an absolutely negligible amount of pincushion distortion here. At f1.2 though, vignetting is pretty heavy. Those corners look dark. They brighten up a bit at f2, and at f2.8 we see fairly even brightness overall, so you should at least leave your camera's peripheral illumination option turned on. Now let's see about close-up image quality. The lens can focus down to 85cm, just average for an 85mm optic. The great news is that, even at close distances and even at f1.2, your image quality remains bitingly sharp. Let's see now how the lens works against bright light. It struggles a bit here. We witness quite some flaring and a loss of contrast, so use the lens's hood whenever you can. Now let's take a look at something extremely important for a lens of this type, the quality of its bokeh. The lens's autofocus backgrounds look reasonably smooth here. There are no serious problems to report, although some backgrounds can look a little jumbled, and we also witness the typical cat's eye shape to bokeh balls in the corners of your images. And related to bokeh is longitudinal chromatic aberration. At f1.2, bokeh highlights see a little colour fringing, but not too much, pink before the plane of focus and green after. Stop down to f2 to see it essentially gone, so that's a better than average performance. Overall then, well, there's simply no question of this lens's quality at all. It's a straight A student. Well, apart from that slip up with flaring against bright lights and a little vignetting, but really, its images are astonishingly sharp with great colours and contrast, quite smooth bokeh, and an accurate autofocus system. You can't really ask for much more than that. As for its prohibitive price, well, that's up to you and your bank manager. Do bear in mind that third-party lens manufacturers will soon be offering more and more RF mount lenses. Samyang have already released a very nice 85mm f1.4 autofocus lens, which is 1/4 of this Canon lens's price. 1/4, and it only lets in a third less of the light. But if money isn't an issue for you, and you're going by the lens's merits alone, then of course it absolutely has to come highly recommended.